Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns finished their season with a win over the Bengals backups to go 8-9. General Manager Andrew Berry, Coach Kevin Stefanski, and several players talked to reporters after the season ended. To discuss what we heard is Dave Chudowsky of Go, the WKYC Morning News. What's going on, Chud?
Scott, ready to get after it here. You know, it's weird. We've done so many of these, and not to actually talk about an upcoming game seems kind of, I guess disappointing, right?
Yeah, it takes us back to when we started this, right? In the off season, we were talking about other things and, free agency and training camp and, non-games, but it's more fun when there's a game to talk about, right? Especially with, what are they calling this, Super Wild Card Weekend? We got games nonstop from Saturday afternoon to Monday night. I
love it.
Me too. I'm really excited for it. I mean, this is to me, it's the best time of the year. As a football fan, right? You get to watch all these games, and then the next week is good, and the next, it just keeps building. But yeah, we've been talking about the Browns being there, right? And they're not there.
Yeah, everyone loves March Madness, and there's so many things in sports you say, oh, nothing beats this time of the year. Game 7 of the World Series. There's so many things we could break down, but really, there's nothing more enjoyable than the NFL playoffs. Every game you just can get into, and it's just so much fun, and especially, each weekend delivers its own thing. And to be honest with you, the Super Bowl is almost kind of a letdown compared to some of the weekends that lead up to it.
I agree with you. I think that division weekend is great with whatever it is, 4 games, and then you go down to the 2 games. It's the problem is they're only on the weekends, right? And you got the rest of the week, which is a little different than March Madness or even, when college football is going on. But I'm with you. I plan to just lock in front of the TV and watch a bunch of football.
Yeah, no doubt. I like, picking teams with friends and kind of just, having different things on the line. If you can do small things to make it fun, that's always enjoyable too. I know some people keep fantasy football going. I used to do that with some buddies. There'd be 4 of us, and we would actually pick fantasy teams each weekend. So that was always fun. I kind of quit doing that. It just became too much. But there's so much around it that you can have fun with. But I guess, I don't want to talk too much about the last game. But as I watched it, by the way, you got it right. I got it wrong. We both end up at 10-7. So
there you go.
After all that, with the same record. And as I'm watching the game, I was just like, man, boy, did I get this wrong. You nailed it. The Bengals just did not care. I thought that they might care a little bit more. The Browns, obviously Chubb played, and the Browns definitely, I'm not going to say that it's not like they went after it necessarily, but they definitely cared more. The Bengals just, they didn't care, and you were right on that. And congrats on getting that right.
Thanks. Yeah, the Bengals got Jamar Chase's the Bengals season receiving record, and then they pretty much shut it down, right? And the Browns cared is might be a little strong, like you said, but Kevin Stefanski cared. He wanted to win. He wanted to go out the right way in his mind. And they played a lot of guys. Chubb started and then sat down and then went in for a couple more carries when Dearness Johnson got tired. But, I kept looking out there, and for most of the game, into the second half, it was Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, John Johnson III, right? They had their best players out there. The starting offensive line played all game. So Stefanski coached it like he said he would. He wanted to win. And the Browns had more talent than the Bengals' second and third stringers. And we don't need to spend much time on this at all, but I do want to make this point, and maybe it would come up later anyway. But for all the people saying, oh, Case Keenum would have won all these games, and he should have been the guy when Baker was, banged up during the season. But yes, Case Keenum won that game, but I think it's a wrong observation to think that how he played makes the argument for he should have been playing during the season. He threw for 175 yards, threw a pick into the end zone that cost the Browns points at the end of the first half, and had a fumble that the Bengals returned for a touchdown that kept the Bengals in the game. So it's not like Case. Yes, he can operate the offense, but he made two huge mistakes that made it a close game where the Browns had to scramble to recover an onside kick, which they almost butchered again, which would have been the second time this season. So, not that one game means everything, but I think it was a reminder that Baker is better than Case Keenum, so much better than Case Keenum that when Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, for the 19th time, say Baker was cleared to play, he practiced good enough, and he's our starting quarterback, and he gives us the best chance to win, I think we're going to have to start to believe them, because I've been on that train the whole time. We talked about it a million times, but I think that was reinforced, to me at least, with that finale on Sunday.
Yeah, tough to argue your point there. I think you're spot on, and to think too, it wasn't again like you're taking on a team that cared.
Exactly.
I mean, so that goes to the point. The only thing I will say, and this isn't going against your point, I think there is an argument to be made though that at some point could have you given Baker a week or two off, not necessarily going in the Case camp, but just to maybe get him healthier. But again, who knows? Because they, like you said, they said he was healthy enough to play. I don't know if the eye test tells you that necessarily, if he always looked like he was, but yeah. I mean, your point's pretty much spot on. Let me ask you this: Are you? Do you think it's a big deal that they won compared to losing as far as momentum into the offseason? Also, you gave up that fourth place schedule next year. Does that mean anything?
No, I mean, I'm kind of split on that. I don't think the win gives you a whole bunch of momentum going in next year. I think it's better than the alternative. I think 8-9, and it's weird because in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it matters. But I've written 8-9 now for almost a week, and it feels different than if I had been writing 7-10, right? Like, and again, it's like that doesn't matter, but that's Kevin Stefanski's record, right? It's one game better. It just looks different because it is, right? You don't have double-digit losses. Like, I think there's some psychological level to it. But having said that, while yes, it probably doesn't matter much, if at all, I do think you have to play to win. And, I'm on this text chain with a bunch of knuckleheads, and, some guy was on there saying they should have lost because not only would it have improved their draft status, it gives them the fourth place schedule. And the fourth place schedule looks different, right? You get the Giants instead of Washington, and I think it's Jacksonville instead of Houston. I just don't think you can think like that. And I never thought you could think like that. When the Browns were at the bottom of the league and it was, hey, if you lose, you guarantee the number one pick. I never bought into that. I think that's the wrong way to think. I think you can't have that mindset and approach as an organization. So especially, I mean, and that has a lot more to it, right? You have the number one pick in the draft versus 2 games on the schedule might be more advantageous, which we won't even know, right? You don't know how the offseason is going to play out. You don't know how the schedule is going to play out. So I think they were better off winning it. Now, having said that, I'm not sure if there's any carryover, but I think you have to approach it that way. And I'm glad the Browns did approach it that way.
Yeah, let's be honest. The schedule game, it's going to change. Everyone knows that. We talk about that all the time. So while on paper it looks better, at the end of the day, is it going to be that big of a deal? You got to go out and win your games anyway. So, that's something. Let's work on that first. Let's work on winning the games again, no matter who you're going up against. But can you explain to everyone the difference in the draft positioning had they won or lost? And is that a big deal either way?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up real quick, Chug, because I was so locked into what it actually turned out to be. I'm gonna look it up real quick. But again, first of all, you got to win regardless. But even if you take that out of the equation and say, okay, let's be utilitarian here. If they move up from 13 to 10, is that a huge difference, right? Like, I just don't think it is. It's not 4-1, right? Like, you're not chasing that one quarterback. Now, who knows? Maybe the Browns draft a quarterback and we'll look back and go, oh my gosh, it would have been better if they were 3 spots higher. But you can always change things. You can always make a trade to move up spots, especially in the middle to the first round, right? It's not, like I said, it's not moving up 3-1 where you got to give up, a bunch of first round draft picks. So if they had lost, they would have been, this site keeps jumping around on me, but Washington is at 7-10 as well. And there are a bunch of teams at 7-10, starting at number 8, Atlanta, Denver, the Jets, which is Seattle's pick, and Washington. So the Browns would, I don't know. It's all strength of schedule tiebreakers. So I don't know exactly how high they could have gone up, but let's say they would have finished 10. They would have finished no worse than they could have finished as worse as 12. So, it's a couple of spots. I don't think it's a big deal. Can they get a good receiver at number 13? Yeah, they could get a good receiver at number 13. And if they feel like there's a guy they need at number 10, they got enough draft capital to go up and get that spot. So I don't think that should have been in consideration at all.
Before we get into the different things that happen in the week, let's just put a bow tie on the season as far as expectations. And I think you went 12 wins, I went 10.
Yeah.
We both had them in the playoffs. But I'm just going to say this now. And this isn't to you. This is to Browns Nation. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's remember this team has never won the AFC North. Let's remember their history. And I don't care how much talent it might look like they have. It is not easy to win this division. And, before, we proclaim them to be the next big thing, we need to remember how difficult it is. And this is another example of just the excitement that we have in this city about this team. And while it definitely, because they made the playoffs and they beat the Steelers in the playoffs, it was well deserved. And, you felt like it was changing. We talked about this on this pod about, remember, Scott, teams that make the playoffs for the first time in a long time, and then how you have that, you go backwards that next year. It's just very difficult to win this division. And listen, I had them making the playoffs. I'm in the boat too. Most people are, but I remember people picking them to win 14 games. Yeah. And let's remember this before we jump to any huge conclusions before next year.
Yeah, I think those are all really good points, Chud. I'm glad you mentioned the kind of natural regression is not the right word, but the natural setback or step back for teams that have that playoff breakthrough. Part of that is you're not used to being there. Part of it's the way the NFL works. It's hard to win in this league. And you're talking about the AFC North, and it's especially hard to win in the AFC North. But in general, it's hard to win in this league. And the teams that do it, and we're going to get into this more, the teams that do it consistently have the best quarterbacks in the league. So if you don't have that and you don't have your quarterback playing like that, it makes it even harder. And that's when the margins get even thinner. And you see it across the league. It's not just a Browns thing. So I think we probably should have been more on alert for the natural step back, including you win close games one year, you lose close games the next year, right? There's an element of luck involved in that. An element of things just kind of work, the big number or the big math or whatever just kind of works out to that way. So I think all your points are good, but I will say that what adds to the disappointment is the AFC North felt like it was there for the taking this year. And you never know if it's going to be the same in any other year, right? Including 2022. The Steelers were down, even though they went to the playoffs, and it's, to some degree, well, it's a testament to the Steelers organization that they're in the playoffs with a team that was not extremely talented and couldn't score points, right? And the Browns still got swept by them. Right, but they were down this year. The Ravens obviously were down given all their injuries. Lamar misses the last whatever games. They lose the final 6 to go from the number 1 seed in the AFC to out of the playoffs. The 2 best teams in the division were down, and the Browns couldn't take advantage of that. And then they couldn't wind up finishing ahead of Cincinnati, who played way better than I expected them to, and now looks like a team to contend with for a long time because of Burrow and Chase and Higgins and Boyd and Mixon, and all, Trey Hendrickson. So my point is, but the Bengals got in at 10 wins, right? So they won the division with 10 wins. That's where we thought the Browns would be. I mean, you were lower than a lot of people with 10 wins. If the Browns win 10, they win the division. So yes, it's hard to win the AFC North, but the opportunity was there this year. And I think part of that, that stings even more. And then the other thing I'll say is I think you have to learn how to win, right? And the assumption was the Browns figured that out last year, but it's more than a one-year process. We talk about culture and winning traditions, being able to overcome. And I think the Browns are lacking that this year because they had the talent. And I don't care how many guys were hurt. I don't care how many guys missed games with COVID. And Joel Bitonio said this. They had the talent, and they should have been able to overcome it, and they didn't. And it came down to making plays in the fourth quarter, right? All the things we've talked about a billion times, why they're 8-9 and not 11-7, right? Or 11 and I can't even do the math. 11-6, right? I mean, the margin is that thin. But they did have the talent. They just were not able to do it. And again, that goes back to the disappointment and the frustration. Is that the opportunity was there, and they just they couldn't capitalize.
No, you make some great points there. I want to get to that talent that you just brought up in 1 second, but I want to say one more thing. But you're right about that with the division. And so when I predicted 10 wins, I had them as a wild card, and I kind of in my mind was thinking, and now I feel like it's a year behind because in my mind I'm like, all right, they'll get the wild card, they'll get into the playoffs again. And then I want to see them, I always talk about show me first before I predict.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm kind of like, now next year, can I predict them to win the division? Because I don't know if they know how, can they figure that out? Maybe I will. We'll see. A lot of time will play out. But in my natural progression, I was like, all right, they'll get 10 wins. They'll get the wild card. A lot of people felt like you needed to have 12 or 11, 12, 13 wins. I kind of looked at the AFC and thought that there was a lot of teams bunched together. I mean, look, the Chargers didn't make it and the Colts didn't make it. There are a lot of teams in the AFC. So I kind of thought that might dwindle down the wins a little bit, but I did not expect 10 wins to win the division. You make a great point there. What a disappointment that 10 wins won the division and it wasn't the Browns. So you're so right about that. Last thing I'll say too, is that, remember last year, they didn't deal with crowds. They didn't deal with the media really. There was all those things. It was kind of a outlier year, right?
It was
a different type of So then they come in this year with all of that stuff back, and they take a step back. But let's go to what do you think about that? Do you think there's anything to that?
Yeah, I think that is one of the factors. They go into Kansas City in the week 1 and can't finish it off, and that's a loud crowd. Right, they're in Baltimore on a Sunday night game and can't finish it out. It's a loud crowd. I think it's fair to wonder if that played some part in this. And I also think, you talked to all these players this week, and there was a sentiment of not enough brotherhood, right? And I think Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was the first guy to say it. And he said, I don't want to say it's a lack of unity, but we could be stronger in that area. Brotherhood, unity, chemistry. Talked about the offense and defense kind of staying in their own lanes and not challenging each other, which to some part is probably good because you don't want the defense saying, hey, you need to score more points, you're killing us. But plenty of guys talked about a need for improvement there. And it's interesting because last year everyone was in the same boat with COVID and the whole offseason program was virtual. And Kevin Stefanski, I thought, did a really good job connecting guys through that. He had this 4-H's thing. It was, he had guys give kind of speeches. It was history and heartbreak and heroes. History, heartbreak, heroes. There's another H. And like he connected guys in difficult spot. And then this year you're back together, but you're not necessarily back together because you still have divided locker rooms because of COVID. And you still can't do a whole lot of off the field bonding things, right? So I think that the circumstances were hard and the Browns were not able to overcome that for whatever reason. And, Stefanski says that he believes, and so did Andrew Berry, that that's more of a frustration, right? You get to the end of the year and why didn't we get in the playoffs? Why didn't we do what we needed to do? And you're looking for kind of things to blame. And I could see that, right? You're kind of grasping for something, but multiple players pointed to this. So, I just think things change from year to year. The locker room's different, the vibe's different. So many players are in and out that weren't on the team a year ago, and to whatever degree, that seems to have played some factor in it's hope, heroes, history, and heartbreak are the 4 H's. And Stefanski, it's not like he abandoned that this year, and it's not like he wasn't trying to build chemistry. But you look at all these kind of intangibles and variables, and that's one of them.
I'll give you an H. How about help? Let's help this team, man. But anyway, what about you mentioned talent? Everyone always says that, and I'm not saying that obviously they have the talent. With the naked eye, you could see that. But are we maybe overselling it a little bit? I mean, are they as talented as we believe they are?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Well, let's set quarterback aside for a minute because that means so much, and they weren't nearly as talented at quarterback as they needed to be this year. But if you go the rest of the roster, what I'm basing it on, Chud, is, people ask me, okay, well, what are their biggest needs heading into next year? It's not a long list, right? I mean, this team. For decades, the list was 10 things, right? We need 4 linebackers and 2 defensive ends, and you could just go down the list. Now I look at it and I go, well, they need receivers, and they need a lot of help at receiver, especially depending on what they do with Jarvis Landry, who's due $15 million next year, but the cap hit, if they cut him, the dead money would only be $1.5 million, which is incentive to cut him coming off the year he had. Now, that doesn't mean they will cut him. They need a veteran receiver. Maybe they just say, hey, Jarvis is our best option, and we think we should bring him back, and he's worth $15 million. I can see that scenario. The point is they need help at receiver. And when we talk about the talent before the season to after the season, what happened in that receiver room is the biggest drop-off. Odell was not Odell when he was here, whether it was him or the Browns being unable to get him the ball like they should have. But when he leaves, it leaves a void. Jarvis was not Jarvis. He got hurt in week 2, missed 4 games, was not the same when he came back, missed another game with COVID. By the end of the season, you started to see Jarvis look more like Jarvis, but still career lows and catches, yards, and touchdowns. Rashard Higgins was a non-factor all year long. Donovan Peoples-Jones, it's interesting. We talked so much about him during camp, and he had a great camp. I thought he still showed up during the season. I know some people are down on him. He left plays out there. He dropped a couple balls that he shouldn't have. There's plays that I think he had a chance to make and didn't. You go back to that Baltimore game, there's a play on the first drive that could change the whole thing. He had a chance to catch it and he didn't. So there are obviously examples, but I think overall he did take another step in his development. But he wasn't the breakthrough player you thought maybe he would be, given that camp, the camp that he had. Anthony Schwartz, a 3rd-round pick, had an impact week 1 and then disappeared. So I'll give you that at receiver, right? I think that was a big fall off from what we expected. And then maybe tight end, you thought Austin Hooper would have a strong second year given the contract he was getting. That, they paid him heading into 2020. And he was, solid, but not extraordinary, certainly not worth $10.5 million. But besides that, they still have a good offensive line when guys are healthy. They still have the best running back room in the league. I thought the D-line played well with Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. Now you have to figure out if Clowney's coming back. If not, you need another defensive end. And linebacker, you have JOK, Jacob Phillips started to come on at the end of the year. I think they're set at corner, right? With Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, the second, Greedy Williams, Troy Hill. They have John Johnson the third and Grant Delpit. Now, these guys, some of them need to play better, but really, I had in the offseason going, okay, well, they need to really beef up receiver, and then they have to figure out the pass rush because you don't know about Jadeveon Clowney and Takk McKinley. But I don't see a bunch of holes. So, yeah, I do think the talent outside of quarterback was plenty for this team to be in the playoffs. And I think if you watch the playoffs this weekend, you look around and go, hey, the Browns are as good as X, Y, and Z if you take quarterback out of the equation.
Boy, I think you nailed it, man. Great points all across the board. And I think receiver, when you talk about wide receiver, that's exactly right. That's the spot where you felt like it was going to be so much better, and it just didn't work out. And it's, there's a couple things here and there, but I think you said it well. So I guess that gets us to the segments that we talk about all the time, brought to you by Petrak's Pebbles. And but let's be honest, Baker Mayfield, we'll continue to talk about it. Big news this week. Would you say that was the headline of the week?
Yeah, fully expect Baker to be the starter in 2022 and bounce back by Andrew Berry. Yep. Yeah, and let me ask you this, Chud. To me, that's the no-brainer big headline of the week. First of all, Andrew Berry's doesn't say a lot, so when he is that strong about something, it's worth noting. Obviously, it's the most important position on the team. We all know about Baker's year. So it was significant that he said that. But let me ask you, you've been in this business plenty long.
Yeah.
It's he says it on January 11th, right? Today's the 14th. We're taping this on Friday, so it's the 14th. So yeah, he says on Tuesday the 11th. Do you believe that he really means that? Or he has to say that because Baker might be the guy, right? Baker might be the default option. He's guaranteed almost $19 million next year on the last year of his rookie contract. Who knows if they're going to be able to upgrade? And if Baker winds up being the guy, don't you have to talk all along like he is going to be the guy, right? You have to prop him up. You have to give him support. And then if something changes in February or March or April, where quarterback A, B, or C becomes available, then you shift and you go from, we did fully expect to, hey, we can upgrade and we're always looking to upgrade. So I guess how much stock do you put in to what Andrew Berry says on January 11th?
I think you hit it right on the head. He had to say it. I mean, what else is he going to say? This would mean more to me if Baker wasn't under contract and they had to re-sign him for another year. That would, then if he came out and said something like that, to be like, oh, wow, right. Or they're, but we know that they don't want to sign him to that huge long-term deal. Otherwise it would have been done by now. Right.
Yep.
So basically it's really a no-lose situation to say what he said, because you have him for one more year. He has one more year left, right?
Yep. Yeah. One more year.
Yeah. So, I mean, if things change, then they're going to change. But here's the deal. They might not know. They might not have another option right now. What is the other option? I mean, are you going to bring in a big free agent quarterback? And who's that going to be? How do you know who that would even be right now? There's names and rumors out there. I mean, but what's Russell Wilson going to do? What's Aaron Rodgers going to do? What are some of these? We don't know that yet. So clearly, would you rather have Aaron Rodgers than Baker Mayfield? Sure. I mean, who wouldn't? I don't know if the situation would ever allow that to happen, right? I'm just throwing out names.
Sure.
And is there a quarterback in the draft with where they're drafting that they think they have their future guy? Maybe Andrew Berry's such a smart cat that he knows there's a guy that he can get in the second round that's going to change the franchise, and we just don't know it yet, and he does. I don't know. I mean, so basically I'm just echoing your point as to, that's what he has to say, and it could change. And if it doesn't change, they're comfortable bringing him back because I mean, let's be honest. The guy did take them to the playoffs last year. And, I mean, he is a viable quarterback in the NFL. No one thinks otherwise. I mean, right? He can get it done. He can get it done on any given Sunday. He just doesn't get it done like the elite guys.
I think that's fair to say. And we've seen it enough, right? We've seen him win games. I mean, he won 12 games a year ago, right? If you include the playoff game. So I do think if the Browns, forced isn't the right word, but if the Browns wind up bringing Baker back as their starter, there can be a level of optimism there, right? We have seen him do it before, is what they keep saying, right? He had his best year under Kevin Stefanski in 2020. Like, there's things you can point to. And it's, a lot of it's the same stuff the fans point to, right? The Baker believers, point to his successes. And I understand that. And there is a level of thought among coaches that if you can do it once, you can do it again. Now, I don't necessarily buy into that because everybody can get lucky. It's not all luck, but it's all about consistency, right? And that's what makes the great players great, is that they do it week in and week out. And it's not once every 6 weeks, right? Or once every 6 games. So I'm not necessarily a believer in that. But I do think if he's your guy in 2022, you can say, okay, let's get him back to where he was in 2020. We've seen his arm strength be good enough. We've seen his accuracy from time to time be good enough, right? He started this season great. He had, through 2 games, he was 80%, leading the league. So you had those glimpses you can kind of grasp onto. But I'm having a hard time getting 2020 out of my head, or 2021, 2021 out of my head, right?
Yeah.
And,
no, it's hard. And the positive to Baker is, if part of that was the injuries, though, and he can come back, and that really did hold him. I mean, he's a human being, right? If the injuries really held him back, the problem I have, though, is, and while that could be the case, I also have seen with my own eyes, the guy cannot win a big game at the end of the game. And the numbers show that. And that's whether he's healthy or not, that's my concern with Baker Mayfield. It's not that he can't come out and do it any given Sunday, as I said. It's the just being that elite guy. And, but, it's not to say that he can't turn it around. I mean, you can't close the book on this guy. You just can't. But at the same point, like you said, it's hard to get those images out of your head.
Well, I get a couple points on there, Chud. And I think I'm going to work on a story the next couple of days about the quarterback options, right? It's bring Baker back. It's try to upgrade, the draft, whatever, all those options that are out there. So maybe next week we can just do, if nothing else happens, we can just do all Baker quarterback. Because I still think that's worth talking about and really diving into. But when you talk about, the injuries, it is a question of how much did those affect him? And there's different opinions there. To me, I don't think that's an excuse. I think he needs to overcome some things. I can point to the Cincinnati game. He played well with the torn labrum and the restrictive harness. So it's not like he couldn't do it. He just didn't do it enough. He didn't do it enough at the right moments. And I think that's a mark against him. I think it goes beyond accuracy. There's decision-making. There's seeing the field. Things that aren't directly contributed to the torn labrum in the harness he's wearing. And that concerns me, that he wasn't good enough at that level. And, you talk about quarterbacks, it starts with that. It starts with seeing the field and making the right reads and making good decisions. And if you don't trust your quarterback to do that, it's awfully difficult in this league. And I do think it was telling that, at least on some level, that when you ask Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, specifically Andrew Berry, and I asked him, I think multiple people did, but I know I did, well, what gives you confidence that Baker's going to bounce back? The answers are toughness and team-oriented and work ethic. Well, those are all great qualities, but it would be nice to hear him say, well, yeah, he makes good decisions. He throws the ball where we ask him to. He puts it on the money. He avoids sacks. You're right. He's got great pocket presence, but those things don't come up as answers. And even when you talk to teammates, it's always toughness this, right? And he's a fighter. And I'm not diminishing that quality. And I think those are important qualities. But you need some tangibles, right? Like standing tall in the pocket and seeing the open receiver in front of you and getting the ball out of your hand in a timely manner. Like those things matter, and they matter greatly. And Baker was deficient in those areas way too often this year. So,
man, you are on fire today. I mean, that is an amazing point. It really is.
Thank you. Which is why you say you can't close the door on him. I'm not convinced about that, Chud. The league's not going to close the door on Baker, but if the right guy popped up, I really do believe the Browns would close the door on him. The question is,
no. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. No, I'm not saying that the Browns can't close the door on him. I'm saying in his NFL career, you can't close the door on him.
Well, yeah, you're 100% right. You're right about that. He's going to be somewhere, right? And he's going to be playing somewhere. It's just a matter of where it is. And then it's a matter of, are the Browns going to have a legitimate option to upgrade, or do they find a guy that can just kind of push him, a viable alternative that you bring to camp? And if Baker struggles, you change, right? Is it the Mitchell Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, somebody in that vein that doesn't come in and is necessarily the starter, but gives you that option? I need to go through all the quarterback rosters to see who else might fit. Do you consider Kirk Cousins an upgrade? Because he might be available. They blew everything up in Minnesota, right?
Well, and let's not forget, you're talking to a guy. I've said it all year long. I didn't know whether he was the guy, and this was before the season started.
Right.
I mean, I told you how many times that I didn't know whether they should give him that big. Could you imagine if they gave him that big deal right now?
Yeah.
Unless getting him that big deal would have changed him mentally and he'd be a different guy. I don't know. Is that possible?
Well, that's a great point, Chud, because I thought they would sign him. I thought they should sign him. And you're right. Now, there's a chance that if he had the big contract, they might have shut him down sooner. Like, you wonder about that, right? Okay, we're really thinking about the future is opposed to this year, which I don't love that attitude, but I think it's something that would have been considered. Possibly, probably not, but I just think you can't rule that out. And yeah, maybe, Baker knowing that the Browns were completely in his corner because they're paying him $40 million, maybe that has a psychological aspect and impact. I struggle with that. Again, you're right. These guys are human and things matter, and the support from your organization matters, right? And Odell's dad ripping you publicly, probably, I'm sure that had an impact on Baker. He said it had an impact on him. There's internal drama, right? But I guess I want my quarterback to be above that. And I want my quarterback to overcome those things. So,
and another thing too that drives me nuts is just go out and be the guy and play the game and stop having issues with media members and going on Twitter and everything that I hate that. I wish he could get past that. Love the commercials, right? But also when I see the commercials, I'm like, gosh, I mean, you would think this guy had won a Super Bowl with the way,
right?
So it's just those type of things drive me nuts. And I
think that's a great point. I think they bother the Browns as well. I think when you look at the whole evaluation of Baker, those are cons. I think you can include, after they beat the Lions, him not talking to the media and kind of walking off the field without celebrating. I think that is also included in the pile, right? Things that other quarterbacks don't do, and some people dismiss those. I don't. I think those all get thrown in the pile of, okay, is he the guy? And obviously he's not answered that question affirmatively yet. You can say that he still has a chance, not you, just people can say that he still deserves another chance, and I'll listen to that argument. But you're 100% right about that contract, Chud. I mean, just imagine if this year plays out the same way. He struggles, he's got the injuries, all of it. And that the team's committed to him for $40 million guaranteed for the next 2 or 3 years, and they can't get out of that contract, right? Then you're looking at a situation where there's no choice but to bring him back for another year. right? He's got to be your guy. There's no way around it. And then you're starting to think of escape plans like the Eagles did with Carson Wentz and like the Rams did with Jared Goff, right? After they signed those big contracts. So you're 100%. And I give the Browns credit to Paul DePodesta and Andrew Berry for not rushing into that contract. And the fact is they never got close, right? There were never substantial discussions, which means they wanted to see more from Baker.
All right. Before we talk NFL playoffs here and a little prediction time, what else from the week of hearing from Barry and Stefanski stands out to you before we put this week to bed?
The couple of nuggets, right? Stefanski was on the radio on Thursday, 92.3 Baskin and Phelps, who I go on with every week. And he was more open about the relationship with Baker. We've asked him a bunch of times because not only are there rumblings of tension and frustration, Baker criticized the play calling twice, right? He says after the win over Baltimore, we got too conservative. And he says after the loss, the Monday night loss to Pittsburgh, we needed to help James Hudson more at right tackle. Those are direct shots at Coach Kevin Stefanski. And whether or not, I don't think those are like relationship killers, but your quarterback usually doesn't say that about your coach, right? Publicly to the media after games. So we don't have to go searching for examples of conflict between the two, because those are two examples Baker told the world. So that's been a topic of conversation. Kevin Stefanski had not said much about it. We're fine. The relationship hasn't changed. But on Baskin and Phelps, he said, hey, we push each other. He respects me. I respect him. We have a good working relationship. So, that's another step toward Baker coming back in 2022 as a starter is, can they work through these issues? I've been told by someone familiar with their exit meeting that, yes, they're committed to working to solving all these issues. The exit meeting was a positive step, according to Kevin Stefanski and Baker Mayfield. So that's one takeaway. One of the other ones was Andrew Berry says play calling is one of Kevin Stefanski's strengths, and he doesn't see a problem there. We've talked about the play calling a bunch, right? I think people should just get used to the fact that Kevin Stefanski's probably going to be play caller again. You just need that system to work better. The passing offense, from the game plan to the play calling to the quarterback to the receivers, all of it needs to be better. And then the last thing, I'd almost slipped my mind here. Andrew Berry was asked about Jarvis Landry, and he did not answer the part of the question, which was, do you plan to bring him back? Right? Or, what's Jarvis's future? And I already went through the contract situation. It felt like Andrew Berry was giving Jarvis Landry a send-off. He said all kinds of nice things about him. That's how it felt. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a way that Jarvis comes back. You let the free agency play out. He's your best option. Or you go to Jarvis and say, hey, can we lower your number for 2022, but we'll keep you for another year or two, right? And you restructure his contract. Those are scenarios that I can envision, but I thought the way Andrew Berry answered that question, or not answered the question, was a sign that at the least it's a question whether Jarvis Landry comes back, but probably a probability that Jarvis Landry does not come back.
Oh, I don't like to hear that. I mean, I'm not even concerned about money when it comes to something like, I just feel like they need that guy.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Chad. And maybe I get too caught up, or we as a media get too caught up in those contract numbers, right? Like, man, you can save $15 million with only a $1.5 million cap hit. Like, that's real. And they have cap room, but you can always use more cap room, right? And you're going to probably sign Denzel Ward to a long-term extension that's close to $20 million, right? And you just look at all these things that can happen in the offseason. Jadeveon Clowney, right? Do you think about paying him $12 or $15 million, right? Well, you need to get that money from someone. But your point is right, that it's not all about money, and $15 million is not crazy amount of money to pay your top receiver. And if the Browns decide to draft a receiver in the first or second round, but they want a veteran presence, which in my opinion, they'll need, whether it's Jarvis or somebody else, they need a veteran presence. Can you do better than Jarvis? Now, you might be able to do cheaper than Jarvis, but can you do better than Jarvis? That's a real question for this organization to answer. But I guess my final point is Barry could have been way stronger. And the fact that he wasn't makes me question whether or not Jarvis can stay.
Yeah, I heard that interview yesterday on Baskin and Phelps. I was in the car. I got to hear the whole thing. It was that's a tough spot to be in. I thought Baskin and Phelps did a good job with the interview because you're not going to get the answers that you necessarily are looking for, and it's tough when you have them on to put a guy like that on the spot. I thought they did a good job trying to, get some information out of him without, directly saying, basically, hey, are you going to call plays next year? Because it didn't really go so great this year, and that, you got to figure out a way as a reporter to ask those questions without, he's being nice and coming on the show. That said, media members are, and they even talked about that. Stefanski mentioned in other cities like Philadelphia, how brutal and not brutal, but difficult the media can be. But, there were definitely like the topics of him calling plays and Baker. I thought they did a decent job trying to get as much as they could out of him.
Yeah, I agree. It is a tough spot. I mean, you're going to be combative from the jump with the coach. Plus he's been asked the quote unquote combative questions 3 days earlier, right? We tried to ask him all those questions. So he's smart enough. He's not going to go on there and all of a sudden they're going to like pry it loose. I thought he gave him some nuggets. I thought the question about the script at the beginning of games, I think it was Jeff asked, and he said, hey, we need to do a better job coming out of halftime or even in the fourth quarter, telling the guys, these are the plays we're going to run. And I've never heard Kevin say that before. And I'm not sure I've ever even thought about it like that. Well, they're so ready for the beginning of the game plays. If you can figure out a way to get them ready for the next set of plays, right? Could have an impact. So I thought that was an interesting point that they brought up.
All right. You ready to do some predictions?
I am.
All right, let's do that. Let's
you got them in front of you?
Here for the week. Yeah. Here we go. 6 games. This is going to be good. You got 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and then for the first time ever, Monday Night Football, right? We've never had a Monday Night Football game in the playoffs.
No, that's going to be really interesting. And I think the Mannings are going to do one of these games. I don't know if it's a Monday night game or not, but I'm pretty sure they're going to do one of the wild card games, the Manning cast, and I think that'll be great.
I thought I heard that was Monday.
Okay.
But I
mean, that would make sense, but I just don't know that for sure.
Yeah, don't hold me to it. But boy, how about the Colts, man, not getting in, losing to the Jags? That's unbelievable. And the fact that the Steelers snuck in.
Chud, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That is unbelievable. If you're the Colts and you're the Colts fans, I don't know how you wrap your head around that. And you're all of a sudden you're thinking you're a team that might be able to surprise people because you can run the ball. Right in the playoffs, you can hand it to Jonathan Taylor a ton, and then you lose to Jacksonville. It doesn't make any sense. And I need to go back. I didn't watch all the in-season Hard Knocks. I've caught bits and pieces, but I need to go back and watch that one because I think it's got to be great. I caught right at the end where it's Frank Reich kind of saying goodbye to the team, his exit speech to the exit team meeting. But I need to go watch that whole episode because it's got to be great. Maybe they show guys thinking that they're going to go into Jacksonville and win easy, right? I mean, that has to be at some level a human thought. Is we're 16-point favorites. You start thinking about being in the playoffs, and then it comes up and bites you in the behind. So, that's
right.
great.
But did you see they hadn't won there since like 2014 or something?
I heard about that during the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe there's something there. And then there's the Carson Wentz, the guy didn't throw an interception on the road, I don't think, all year. And then he did. I think that's
you're right.
True. I mean, but there's always there's always a lot of pressure and talk about him as a quarterback. So,
well, did you see what his GM said when they asked about him coming back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ready to say that.
And they traded a first and third round pick to get him, right?
Right, which just shows you, right? I mean, first of all, it shows you how this quarterback carousel is going to spin in this offseason. And it shows you that you're always searching for that guy, right? And not that Indy can't bring him back, but they had to look at him for a year and might have said, hey, we just can't win consistently with this guy, right? And then it's okay, who are we going to go get next? It's fascinating. And then how about the whole Raiders Chargers tie scenario with Pittsburgh? That game, I mean, I'm sure you couldn't have stayed up, right? You had to get up early.
Yeah,
that was the best game I've seen in forever, Chud. That game was fascinating. Herbert, I mean, he must have converted like 8 fourth downs to give him a chance to win that game. He was phenomenal, and then they still wind up losing on that field goal.
I can't tell. My daughter is so into the NFL right now. She was so into watching the Browns game, even though it didn't mean anything. And we pick helmets for the playoffs. We got these little tiny NFL helmets. And she was all into that game. Like, what's going to happen? And I was explaining to her, I'm like, there's only been one tie in the NFL this year, right? And that was the Steelers Lions, and the fact that game almost tied with everything on the line, that would have, it definitely would have been just so crazy if that game would end in a tie. But she was all into it. Like, the Steelers are going to get in? You're kidding me. And I'm like, it's just, oh man, it's there's nothing like the NFL. It really is. It's exciting. So, all right, let's, now I want to go back and watch that game. Yeah.
It was so good.
I saw the first quarter and then I had to bail, but had to get up early, obviously, for work. And the morning show, go.
There you go.
Channel 3. There's my cheap foot. All right, Raiders, Bengals. Who do you got? That's the first game.
Yeah. Do you got the spreads in front of you?
Well, yeah, I did write them down.
Okay.
Unless they've changed. I got Bengals -5.5.
I'm going to take the Raiders plus the points. I'm more. I think Cincinnati can throw it all over them, but Max Crosby just dominated the Chargers the other day, and I don't think the Bengals offensive line is any better than the Chargers offensive line at right tackle, which is where Crosby comes off. So I think there's a chance that the Raiders stay in this game because they can get a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow, who was sacked a ton this season. And then I like Derek Carr to make some plays against that Cincinnati defense. So I would say Cincinnati wins, but at this time of year, with the point spreads, I kind of think the Raiders are going to keep it close.
Yeah. So you're going Bengals win?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
But but give me, I like the Raiders in the points like that. I like that pick better than the Bengals winning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Bengals probably pull it out. So yeah, that's what I would go. Yeah.
All right. I'm going Bengals. And now they haven't won a playoff game since what, like 1990?
Yeah, it's been forever.
91, somewhere in there. The Browns have even won a playoff game since then. I'm going to go Bengals. I just think there's something special about Burrow. And while I do agree mostly with the thought of 5.5, I'm going to go the opposite and just say that Cincinnati pulls it out and they even cover. Just the fact of, that late game on Sunday night, then you got to travel across country and then play on Saturday.
That's a good point, Chud. That was in my head too. So that's a good point.
But we both think the Bengals win the game, bottom line.
Yeah.
At night, Patriots at Bills. And, about a month and a half ago, if you would have told me that now it is in Buffalo, I would have gone Patriots probably because the Bills were struggling and the Patriots defense looked amazing. You get, greatest coach ever, blah, 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 blah. I'm picking the Bills to win, though. I think the cold weather at home. I mean, they're both cold weather teams, but I think, I can't go against my boy, Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, so I'm going with him, and I don't know if they'll cover or not.
That's the line.
That's tough. 3.5. Buffalo -3.5.
Yeah.
So, but I'm definitely picking the Bills to win and maybe to cover.
Yeah, I like the Bills big in this, Chud.
Yeah, okay.
And I could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong on all these, right? But we know what happened when they played that. It was a Monday night game in the terrible weather, right? And the Patriots ran it 50 times on them. And it's going to be cold again in Buffalo Saturday night, like really cold.
Yep.
But I think Buffalo's just a better team. Josh Allen's so much better than Mac Jones.
Yep.
If you need to throw it, he's got the arm to throw it. You would think that Buffalo could make an adjustment to not let New England run the ball for 300 yards. I just think they're more talented, and it shows up in a home playoff game.
All right, we're both on the same page there. Sunday early game, Eagles at the Buccaneers. Eagles are getting 8.
I'm going to take Philly with the points. I think Tampa wins, but I'm taking Philly with the points. The weather's good again. Not that I'm a huge, I'm not Betsy Kling, but it's going to be windy and rainy. I think that affects the passing game. The Buccaneers have issues, right? We saw what happened with Antonio Brown. Chris Godwin, I believe, is still hurt. They just don't have the receiving core that they had earlier in the year. Philadelphia can run the ball. Now it's tough to run, and Vita Vea is in there with Tampa, but I still think Philly's going to figure out a way to run the ball as long as they don't get behind by a bunch of points. Hurts can make some plays off schedule, assuming he's healthy. So I just think I think the weather kind of equalizes things a little bit, and Philly keeps it close but loses. But I like the +8.
Okay, I'm going Buccaneers too. It's hard to imagine Tom Brady losing a playoff game at home as an 8-point favorite. I could go either way on the line. I could see you being right about that. I could also see a case where you got just such an advantage at quarterback. Hurts is. He had a heck of a year, but he had more of a heck of a fantasy year than he's a better fantasy quarterback than he is a real quarterback at this point.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I hesitate. I would probably stay away from this line.
I can see that. Yeah.
So, but I guess gun to my head, I'll take the Bucs even covering, but
okay.
I would definitely not bet it, and I don't disagree with any of your points. This is going to be a good one. This is probably the one I'm looking forward to the most. This is the Sunday 4:00 window. 49ers at the Cowboys. Cowboys -3. I love everything about this game. I love both offenses. This is going to be a fun one. I'm going to go first on this one because this is my upset.
Ooh.
I'm taking the Niners to win.
Wow.
And part of that is because my boy Debo, man, I love that guy. I love watching him. He was on my fantasy team, yes, and I love the guy, man. I love watching him. They have a lot of playmakers on that offense. Now the Cowboys at home do put up points, so this is a bold kind of prediction, but I also see the Cowboys as being that team that could just choke here in the first round. So I'm going Niners.
Yeah, you're probably right about this being the best game, Chud. I'm going to go Cowboys, and I'm going to give the points. And I'm saying that based solely on the quarterback. I think Dak Prescott is a big-time quarterback, and there's still questions about Jimmy G. And maybe when we talk about quarterback options next week, Jimmy G is a quarterback option, right? Because it would seem like he's going to be available. They drafted Trey Lance. They traded up to draft Trey Lance. They traded up and then drafted Trey Lance. So you would assume he's going to be the starter next year. So therefore, Jimmy's going to be available. I think there's a real discussion to be had whether or not he is an automatic upgrade over Baker. I'm not convinced he is. You could make an argument that he is. I know he played great to bring him back last week, right? They needed the win to get in the playoffs, and he brought him back in the fourth quarter to beat the Rams. Maybe that's the momentum they need. I know that they can run the ball, and if you can run the ball, it gives you a chance to win. I get all those things. but I think quarterback's so important in the playoffs, and I really like Dak. I think he's got weapons around him. So give me the Cowboys, but it's a little scary for sure.
And you have them covering.
I do.
Okay. All right. Those are all good points. Steelers Chiefs Sunday night football. By the way, that Raiders Bengals game is on NBC on Channel 3. That's on Saturday. Then Sunday night football, Steelers and Chiefs. Steelers right now getting 12.5. I got to tell you, I'm going to.
It's a huge spread.
That's hot. Yeah, that's huge. 12.5. I got to take the 12.5 from the Steelers. I'll pick the Chiefs to win the game. That said, though, man, the Chiefs could do, they could win the Super Bowl or get upset at any point. That's how up and down I think it could be with them. But I'll definitely take the 12.5.
Yeah. This might be one I would stay away from a gambling perspective. Not that I gamble, but if I were gambling, I'm gonna say the Chiefs, and I'm gonna say they cover.
Whoa! Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me this is. I mean, the point spread shows it. To me, this is the biggest mismatch in the playoffs. I really respect what Ben and the Steelers did to get there, but I mean, geez, Chud, we watched them play on Monday night against the Browns. We watched them play on that Sunday game against the Browns where they scored 15. I watched them play the Chiefs a few weeks ago, and they couldn't score. Like, they couldn't move the ball.
You're right.
Like, the Chiefs are going to score points. So I just have a hard time thinking the Steelers can keep up. Now, I'm sure there's a scenario where they run the ball a bunch and keep it away from Pat Mahomes and shorten the game, right? And that keeps it in the ballpark. But I also think there's a chance that Kansas City scores early, and then the Steelers have no chance.
Well, if there's a coach, Mike Tomlin could figure out a way to try to keep that game a little bit closer and with the second chance.
Yeah.
But well, you're right. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, a lot of these spreads, I mean, I could just see them going either way. I mean,
sure. That's right.
know.
That's what makes it tough, right? Yeah.
Right. I think the last game, Cardinals Rams. So I feel really confident in the Bengals, pretty confident in the Bills and the Bucks. Like, those are games where, if the other, I would kind of be surprised if the Raiders won outright. I would. I'd be surprised if the Eagles won outright.
Yeah.
I'm picking the 49ers as an upset, but listen, I'm picking one upset. This is the game where I really think it could go either way, and is a tough one. Cardinals at the Rams. Cardinals, the Rams -4. I definitely think with the line, it's tough. I think this is the toughest game to pick, but I just think the Rams are better. So I'll go LA.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this, first of all, it's a division rivals, right? Which makes it harder to pick. I think both teams are flawed. You saw Arizona play, I think I'm right about this. They played really well to beat Dallas in week 17. And then they lose week 18 to Seattle, right? I'm pretty sure that happened. I was covering the Browns, but I'm pretty sure that happened. The Rams have been up and down all year. Like, they're on TV, they're on national TV all the time, so I've seen them up and down. Stafford throws picks, but then he comes back to win the game in Baltimore in week 17. Odell's making plays in the red zone. Cooper Kupp's phenomenal. They have a big-time defensive line. Like, I think the Rams are better. I also think this is the kind of game where if Stafford throws an early pick or two, it swings. To me, this is a game that's going to be decided. They're all decided by how they play out, but like, this feels like it could change during the game. It's not about talent, it's about how the game plays out. If one of the coaches schemes something up that, gives up a touchdown, it just feels like it could swing really easily to me. Having said that, I'm not a big Kyler Murray lover. He's grown on me, but that style isn't my favorite, just from a fan perspective. And I think the Rams are better defensively. Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Von Miller started to show a little the last couple of games. So give me Rams covering, but I'm with you. That's of all these games, that's the one that and the Cowboys game feel to me like they could swing the most. Now, let me ask you this, Chud. I would say Buffalo minus 3.5 would be my favorite game. Like if I were picking one game to load up on, let's say, that would be the game. Do you have a favorite out of all these?
Wow. That's just, yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I love Josh Allen and the Bills. It's just 3.5 with Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I think, I mean, for me, I guess it would be take the 3 and the Niners.
Yeah. I get that.
If I'm picking them to win outright,
give
me the 3.
Yep.
And that would probably, I guess the next one I'd lean towards is I just think at the end of the day, that's a trap line with the Eagles. Yeah. I think you look at it and you're like, oh, I'll take the Eagles in 8. Not you necessarily.
Yeah, I got you.
So I could see the Buccaneers ending up winning that game, like 27-13 or something, something like that. I don't know. So
gotcha.
I'll take, again, I picked the Rams like you did. I'd say Rams cover, but nothing would surprise me on that one. But yeah, cool. But you feel very, I mean, you're that's pretty strong with the Bills. 3.5.
Yeah, and I don't, I'm probably an idiot against Belichick, but I just thought as the season went on, Mac Jones, not that he didn't have a great year, but I thought there were vulnerabilities. I don't think his arm's strong. We talk about them running the ball 50 times that one game or however many times they ran it. A lot of that was because they didn't trust Mac Jones to throw the ball. And if it gets into a spot in Buffalo on Saturday night where it's freezing, I don't know if I trust Mac Jones, his arm to get the ball.
No, I agree. You know what? I think I might take that back and take the Bengals instead of the Bengals.
Okay.
I just think because of those reasons I brought up earlier, I think they cover.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could see that. I know something about, maybe it's because I watched the Raiders win on Sunday night, it leaves that impression like, oh, they got something in them. I don't know. It's been a weird year for them. So, and
hey,
the Bengals got a long time without winning the game.
Who do you got in the Super Bowl?
Oh, geez, Chud.
Dude, what do you think?
You know what? I'm going to go chalk. I'm going to go Packers Chiefs.
Packers Chiefs. All right. I'm going to go. The Chiefs. Gosh, I mean, they're going
to have to go to Tennessee theoretically, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna throw a wild one at you. I'm gonna go Packers Bills.
Okay, I can see that. That might have been my pick before the season. I have to go double check. I had the Bills in the Super Bowl and all that before the season.
Yeah, but gosh, I mean, the Bills, we've also seen them blow it too. So, but I do feel pretty good about the Packers just because of what you never count out Brady though. But if it's gosh. I think it's going to be more difficult for them to get there this year.
I agree with that completely.
All right.
Cool. That was fun, Chud.
That was a good time.
All right. And we'll try to do this again next week because I do want to dive deeper into that quarterback thing, just the quarterback options, and then we can, we'll figure out how we want to do this the rest of the way, but we got free agents we can talk about. There's always something to talk about. So we'll hook up again. I really appreciate the time. This was fun. That was Dave Chudowsky of Go, the WKYC Morning News. And this has been Scott Petrak with another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast. And you can read all my work on brownzone.com. Thanks for listening.